All right, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to our Tempo Talk session. I know a few people are still hopping on, but in the essence of time, we'll go ahead and get started. We're really excited for this professional development series session today. And yeah, let's dive in. So for those of you who are new to our Tempo Talks, welcome. This, just for a little bit of background, is a webinar series that Tempo started right at the start of the pandemic and the shutdown, just as a way to continue to engage with our members and just provide information and keep that virtual programming relevant and top of mind for our members. That has since evolved, and we're excited to continue this programming really as a regular offering of tempos for the foreseeable future. So it's since evolved, and we're now starting this month to hold it once a month, the first or second Friday of the month from noon to 1 virtually. And we really look at this opportunity to showcase our Tempo members and all the various experts and industries that they represent. And so we hope that you will continue to join us for these sessions. A few housekeeping items. If you have been on our Tempo Talks before, you will notice this one looks a little bit different because it is a professional development session. And you do have the capability to unmute yourself and have your video on if you'd like. We do ask that you remain muted until our speakers ask for your participation and get the session started. And video is optional, but encouraged, again, to continue to interact with our members and other attendees, especially during our breakout session that we'll jump into. We also encourage you to utilize the chat box in the Q&A function or the hand raise option to get our speakers' attention and ask questions throughout the session and participate. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Mary Beth Cottrell, who is a member of our Tempo board and our representative from BMO Harris Bank, who is our Tempo Talks sponsor, for a few remarks. Mary Beth.
Hi, everybody. Thank you, Kelsey. It's great to be together, and I'm thankful for the virtual opportunity given the chilly day we have. BMO Harris Bank is very proud to sponsor our Tempo Talks. I am private wealth advisor and director in our private bank. And as Kelsey mentioned, on the Tempo board, proud to be the immediate past chair of the Tempo board. I would just like to take a moment, as I often do, to just share about some progress that we at BMO are working towards in our multi-year strategy of zero barriers to inclusion. Hot off the presses this morning, we learned that we have been recognized for our leadership in diversity and inclusion, and continue to make significant measurable progress, knowing full well that there is much more to be done. Today, we learned that this is BMO's 6th year on the index for the Bloomberg Gender Equity Index. And that is in support of our efforts for BMO's women leaders, women entrepreneurs, female customers and clients, and to remove barriers based on gender. We also learned that we were recognized as part of the Human Rights Campaign, their Corporate Equality Index. BMO received a perfect score and a best place to work for LGBTQ2+ in that ranking, and that's a national benchmarking tool. So we're very proud of the progress that we're making and continue to focus on. And just like today with our professional development and continuing to work towards all of us getting better at what we do every day, and with the people that we get to interact with and work with and live with, it's wonderful. We are all learning and adjusting. So it'll be great to listen to how Judy and Lori have to share with us our influencer skills getting better and strengthening those for the new way of working. Stay warm and stay well, everybody. Thank you.
Thank you, Mary Beth. We are so thankful for BMO and their support of our Tempo Talk sessions. I'm also happy to introduce now Christina Stetter from our Professional Development Series Committee to provide a little bit more information on what sets this session apart from our other Tempo Talks and really showcase what our Professional Development Series is all about. So Christina, I'll turn it over to you, and then she'll introduce our speakers.
Awesome. Welcome, everybody. We are really excited to be together today. This is a session that we have been talking about and working on for quite some time. This is our second noontime professional development session. Typically, if you remember back in the past, these were the ones that were held on Friday mornings at 7 a.m. For some reason, we just didn't think that would work via Zoom. I don't know why. So we've moved them to the noon sessions, and they will be held 5 times throughout the year, obviously continuing to be virtual for now. Our goal is always to provide members with an interactive workshop and an educational presentation that you can take back and implement right away to give you ideas and inspire you to be your best. We want to give you techniques and tools to lead and affect change. We think today's presentation is a great continuation of that goal, and want to remind everybody that these sessions are open to Tempo members, emerging women leaders, but also coworkers and friends. So if you have someone that you work with who you think would benefit from a topic, please invite them. If you have someone that you think might enjoy Tempo membership, please invite them. It's a great way to introduce the group. Okay, now I'm going to flip forward my super technological piece of paper here so I can read the introductions for today's speakers. So I'm really excited to introduce Judy Danow and Lori Kuhn from Thrive, a human development company. Judy has significant experience as an athletic coach, business owner, and Thrive coach. She combines her passion for entrepreneurship with a strong desire to have a significant impact on the world, and partnered with Lori Kuhn to build Thrive, a human development company, where they develop personalized strategies that elevate human impact. Judy has 13 plus years of experience in athletic coaching and performance, and has had multiple training opportunities with USA Olympic coaches to gain the skills needed to better coach her teams to succeed, which sounds like really exciting and scary all at the same time to me. Judy's journey into Thrive coaching started 9 years ago as she reimagined what she wanted to be when she grew up. She now works with top performing executives and teams to connect her athletic, entrepreneurial, and coaching skills to help her clients become powerful influencers from the inside out. And then we also have Lori today. Lori currently works with medium-sized to global companies. She trains leaders, teams, and influencers to make the most impact on business and life using leading-edge skills, strategies, and concepts. She coaches individuals who get it and are looking to solidify and or stretch into the next level in their career and life. Her background includes public accounting in big foreign national accounting firms. For over 30 years, she's thrived in the business, financial, and consulting industry. And she holds certifications in several modalities of human psychology and energy dynamics, mindfulness, and intuition. She's been the director of various women's programs, special events, and leadership teams. She incorporated coaching, business life, and spiritual into her practice 13 years ago, and it provides skills that are keys in elevating human impact. She has a passion for sharing the science and psychology of being human and how it impacts life, business, families, careers, and teams, because they are all intertwined. So thank you, ladies, for being here today. We are really excited to explore our influencer skills as we lead into the unknown.
Beautiful. Thank you, Christina. We are super excited to be here also. We are going to get started. I'm going to jump right in. I know everybody is busy and we have limited time here. So I want to make sure that we get started. And how we always operate is we start with what we call a warm up. And there's a reason why we do this warm up. As a high performing influencer, your day is most often focused on problems, which actually brings us into our sympathetic nervous system, which is our fight or flight. It's kind of that heightened state or that ramped up state. So before we get started in any workshop that we do, we like to give you the opportunity to switch that off and re-engage from a different vantage point, which is the parasympathetic nervous system. The parasympathetic nervous system allows you to be more open and calm and focused. And this exercise that we do seems super simple, and it is, but it's actually really powerful, and you can do it at any moment. So if you look at page 2, you will notice at the top, it says warm up, and then there's a box that says what's working and or what are you celebrating. So what I would love for you guys to do is take a moment and answer that question for yourselves, but jot down some things that are working for you, some things that you're celebrating in the chat box so that we can see what's going on in the world for you guys. I also want to introduce Jen. Jen Fredericks is going to be managing our chat box and sharing a little bit with us today and helping us out from that end. So jot down a couple of things that you're celebrating.
Hello all. I love one of the first things that was shared is celebrating life and Friday. That's amazing. Looks like we have some good work from home balance going on for some. And someone welcomed a new human into the world as an auntie. Congratulations. And some running going on to help everyone with their physical wellness. That's great. Someone has a new position as a national social enterprise. Another one has a new job. Look at that, an optimistic outlook for 2021. That's amazing. There's so many good things coming up. So many things coming up that are great. I love that Drew is taking some time off today to deal with excess stress. That's wonderful self-care.
Beautiful. Keep sharing.
Please do.
Yeah, keep sharing. And we're going to jump into the next section, which is our Explore section. So we are going to go through some concepts today. And what we always ask you to do when we go through concepts is to make sure that if something doesn't feel right to you, or we say something or somebody else says something and it's like, oh, I don't know if I agree with that. We love for you to take that next step further and say, you know, if that's not mine, what is mine? That's an exercise in self-awareness. That gives you the ability to start learning more about yourself. So every opportunity that you have, every interaction gives you that ability to learn more about yourself. The other thing is we also like to be challenged on some of this stuff. So if something comes up and you say, you know what, I really would like to talk through this a little bit more, just unmute and let us know that you're you know, kind of want to discuss it and challenge us on it, and that's perfectly fine too. That's where the good stuff gets in. Awesome. So as leaders, we used to talk about grit, we used to talk about drive, we used to talk about accountability, we used to talk about goals and management, and these are of course still all important, but as you know, and the focus has shifted. Life has changed dramatically since the pandemic has hit, not just in work, it's changed at home. It's a holistic shift in everything that's happened. So now we're starting to talk about, not just starting to talk about, for the last year, we've been talking about resiliency and diversity and empathy and adaptability and listening and self-care and wellness. And again, these are extremely important things, but that shift is a very different dynamic that's going on. And so I listened to Satya Nadella, the CEO of Microsoft, this morning, and he was talking about how people operations will no longer be limited to HR, but will be integrated across the organization to improve the overall health and resiliency of the organization. This, you know, a lot of people might get worried about this because most people are not equipped with the skills necessary to navigate the challenges that this brings, specifically for influencers like you. And so that can be a little bit of a scary thought. But I agree with Satya. I do believe that the pandemic has forced we work. And I also believe that in order for organizations to not just survive, but to thrive, every person in the organization is being called to understand and adopt a human-centric approach. Sorry, my internet just went, what are you doing? In the past, the skills that are essential for a human-centric approach have been seen as soft. Now, Lori and I have known this for a long time, that these skills are not soft. In fact, they are some of the most difficult skills to figure out how to do. And we've been teaching them for a very long time. But in actuality, these skills are critical to aligning your teams and elevating your people. They're also critical to focusing on what matters most, especially now. And so Lori's going to jump in and start talking about what it means to be an impactful influencer today.
Thank you, Judy. One of the things that I really want to get at when it comes to influencing is that it's dynamic. And it's a dynamic skill, because oftentimes people don't think as influencing as a skill. You either have it or you don't. You either influence or you don't. Well, Thrive likes to look at it as a skill, and it's always changing. And so a lot of what we're going to take you into today is just finding your way in it and finding your way in influencing the other individual, because oftentimes when we're influencing people, And I know this, especially, being in corporate America, what works with one individual doesn't work with another. And so when we're talking about influencing, it's from that perspective. It's how am I influencing? That will look different depending on the other individual, and how I'm influencing that person depends on that individual as well. So we want you to keep that in mind as we're going through this, that it's alive, it's breathing, and it's something you always have to look at and make tweaks with. I mean, especially with 2020, a lot of how we used to operate is no longer relevant. And so keep that in mind from an influencer perspective. How you used to do it or how you did it with this person may not be relevant for the next person. And so when we're talking about an impactful influencer we've highlighted some of the things that we found across, especially in the corporate world, that are really powerful skills to have when you're trying to be a good influencer. And so the first one and everything Thrive does, we always start with self-awareness. If you don't have that awareness around yourself and how you operate, you have to start there. I always liken it to putting on your oxygen mask first. If you're not good first, you're not good for anybody else. And so it's really focusing on and understanding who you want to be as an influencer and what that looks like for you, and getting really clear on that. Another part of it is just the adaptability and flexibility, especially, with 2020. It's like, that's how companies operate now. Everybody's in a state of adaptability and flexibility, where we seem to always be on the fly. I know I was talking with a managing partner at one of the accounting firms downtown, and he's like, we were putting out these notices saying, okay, we're coming back in June, and then we're coming back in July. He's like, we finally just gave up on it. And we're like, we'll figure it out. We're not putting out any press release saying we're all coming back on this date, because we don't know. And so he has to be significantly adaptable and flexible depending on what's going on in our current environment. A resource of self-discovery, just helping the other individual understand a little more about themselves and why they may be experiencing something a certain way. And we bring that up in our coaching skills. A lot of times it's just powerful questioning, just to help the person get to their own awarenesses and insight. Another thing we talk about is intuition. And we don't always think of intuition as being a skill, especially that leaders use and have. And so it's that little knowing, or it's kind of like paying attention to what your gut is telling you. And what's really surprising is that a lot of, leading companies use intuition. It's interesting. I was in a conference with Michelle Gass, the CEO of Kohl's, and she was saying that in their senior leadership meeting, a lot of it's intuition, a lot of it's gut instinct, a lot of it's sitting around the table and going, what are you guys feeling? What are you feeling? Well, that's part of influencing. If I'm influencing someone and I'm having a conversation, or I have this relationship with the individual, sometimes it's just kind of checking in with your gut and saying, what's appropriate here, or what do I really think would help this individual? And so when we talk about intuition in relation to influencing, that's a perspective. That's the place we're coming from. We go into equipped with coaching skills. When we talk about coaching skills in this context, it's not I have to go out and be a coach. It's just employing some of those skills that are beneficial. We call it experiential listening, and it's listening with your whole body. Oftentimes we think, I really have to, pay attention to the individual and be present, but we take it a step further, and it's like, read their body language, read their inflections, read their facial expressions, really try to get behind what they're actually saying. Because sometimes people can't, especially now with all the mental, issues that people have that are going on, and some of the health issues they have going on, it's sometimes hard for them to articulate what they're experiencing. And so sometimes, just being able to listen and say, are you trying to get at this, or is this what you're trying to get at, is helpful to them, especially if you see them struggling with it. Powerful questions, we use them all the time. You will hear us, it may sound like a politician where you're asking a question with a question instead of answering the question. But as a coach, we found that very effective for getting people at their own awarenesses and their own insights. Another thing I want to address in here, acknowledgement. That's pretty straightforward, but sometimes we don't realize just how important acknowledgement is. And so just, it's reinforcing their value and the value they bring, which is really important when you're trying to influence. Reiteration helps so that you have an understanding of what they're trying to say. And I use this example. I've said to people, so what you're saying is, and I'll repeat back to them verbatim what I heard them say. I've even gone back and checked the video, and they'll look at me and they'll be like, no, that's not what I'm saying. And they'll say, what I really mean is, because sometimes they need to hear it back to see if it makes sense to them. So when you reiterate it to them, it's like, wow, okay, I said that, but that's not really what I meant. And so reiteration is really important, is a really important skill. Normalization.
Lori,
Yeah.
Lori, can I jump in on reiteration real
Yeah,
quickly?
absolutely.
I think one of the things that's really important from my perspective on reiteration is that a lot of times when we give that back to somebody, a lot of times using reiteration is helpful in a heightened emotional state, because actually all of these skills are, because it helps them to self-reflect. And I think that that is something that we forget about doing, and getting that clarity when those heightened emotions come into play. And so these are tools that you can use specifically in those moments also.
Mm. And then one of my favorites is normalization, because what we do is, as humans, is oftentimes we assign too much importance to something. So we assign something so much importance that it becomes the end all. It becomes how I define myself. And so part of normalizing is when you can normalize something, you take the power off the thing and you bring it back to you. And so oftentimes we'll say insecurity, worry, fear, anxiety, all of those things lie in overestimating the importance of something. So sometimes if I feel really anxious, I'm like, why am I assigning this so much importance? What is this doing for me? Oftentimes when I do that, it's actually detrimental. It can take me into anxiety or into emotions I don't really want to experience. So what we often say is, if you do reduce the importance of the thing, if you can normalize it, you're no longer dominated or hijacked by the perceived importance of whatever that is. And now you can act normally. You can go into it with more perspective, and without that sense of, oh my God, this has to happen this way, or, I'm going to die, or, whatever importance that you're associating with it. And then strategic action implementation. How do you live it? How do you influence someone into action? How do you really make how you're trying to influence a part of this person's experience and a part of your experience? And I'll get into that a little bit more later on, but just from that strategic action, how do you take all of this into action? And then I'll let you read through the next two, and Judy will jump into what we've identified an impactful influencer is not.
I think it's really important to know what an impactful influencer is not, because then we can catch ourselves in those moments where maybe we're using patterns or habits or behaviors that don't necessarily serve us or aren't as influential as we would like to be. I mean, there are a lot of times that we have scenarios where we're showing up in a certain way and we feel so frustrated because we don't feel like we've had any influence on that situation. And so these are a little bit helpful in that. So the first one, mainly giving advice. I just want to call that one out only because it's not that you never give advice, but when you are an actual impactful influencer, it takes a little bit longer. It takes a little bit more intentionality. It's a lot easier to give advice than to kind of slow down and pause and do the things that are over on the left-hand side of the column. And the things that Lori was talking about. And so it's not that you never give advice, but if you're finding that the majority of the time you're giving advice, you are kind of going into the space of not being as influential as you might want to be. I also want to talk about the fourth bullet point down, which is an emotional or energy sponge without boundaries. We call this over empathizing. It can be difficult, especially right now with the challenges that people are facing, to not over empathize. So what do? It's like taking on people's emotions and their challenges does not help them. And I couple this with the last bullet point, which is always giving, taking people's power and personal responsibility away. And so what we can do instead of that is we can actually stay focused on what's going on as an impactful influencer. If you can do that, then that will help you stay out of these areas. What happens if you get pulled into somebody else's challenge is a lot of times you are not grounded. You get to experience their challenge, right? You get to feel what they're going through, and there may feel like there's some compassion there. But if you stay in that space, you're going to be in the same situation that they're in. So what we want you to do is create a boundary so that we call it an energetic boundary, so that you can stay grounded to have the most positive impact through your influence. Down at the bottom of the page, there is a question, page 3 we're on, and it's, who do you want to be as an influencer? So I would like you to take just about a minute here and answer that question for your some other stuff. But who do you want to be as an influencer? If inspired, you can go ahead and put that in the chat. And if there are any questions or comments or awarenesses or ahas that are coming up, you absolutely feel free to unmute and share. Jen, I see some of those coming up. Do you want to call some of those out?
I love the ones that are coming up as like a helpful guide, a trusted resource, someone who leads and encourages with grace and empathy, empowers and motivates others to achieve more than they could imagine, helping to create unknown opportunities.
Beautiful. Thanks, Jen. Keep going. I love it. That is really, that exercise right there, even though you're just answering a question, is a really powerful way for you to start this process of deciding and becoming who you want to be. And I am going to send it over to Lori for the next page.
Cool. Are there any questions thus far? I mean, you can just speak, you can unmute yourself, and just, if you have a quick question and you're like, yeah, I'm not clear on this, or is there anything coming up for you that you just want to throw out there and talk about real quickly? No one wants to call bunk on us?
You're no fun.
You're not, right?
Because it's not bunk. It's not bunk. It's all true. It's a true story.
I love it. I love it. We like that too. Come on, give us more. No.
Okay, we're on page 4, the pillars of an impactful influencer. So we broke this down into 4 pillars, and just to kind of bring some cohesion around it. And so the first one we've identified, again, this is all highly individualized. We're going to give you quite a few skills. When we teach influencer training, we do it over a course of 20 to 25 hours. So we're consolidating this into a short period of time just to give you some good nuggets to take with you. But some of what we want you to understand is there are a lot of skills involved in being a good influencer. So we want you to look at these and just take the ones that will resonate with you, ones you may already be using that you can kind of build on. But we don't want this to be this big overwhelming task that you take on. But where am I already doing it? Where am I doing it effectively? And where can I pick up a few more pieces here and there, a few more nuggets that I can use to make it even better? And so that's our intention behind doing this. And so be present. There are a lot of stats out there. 47% of the time we're distracted. 12 to 50,000 thoughts per minute race through your mind. These numbers are even higher with what we're going through, because based on our current environment, we have far more distractions than we've ever had in the past. And so just being aware of that when you're trying to be present, you know that it's normal for us to be distracted. It is. But if I'm really trying to influence someone and I really want to be present with them, just making that extra conscious effort to be engaged with them, you know, looking into their eyes. If you're virtual, just make sure you're focused on the screen and you don't have a lot of other distractions going on. And then we also have as a skill under being present, I just want to mention engage on an elevated level. And so when we're talking about engaging on an elevated level, it's doing it more holistically. So it's that experiential listening that I talked to earlier. It's that acknowledgement, those powerful questions. You're just really trying to get a feel for where the person's at, instead of, you know, just I'm going to be present and, you know, think about everything I have going on and all the deadlines I have, and I'm here, therefore I'm present. You know, there's a little more to it. Take it to that next step. Be mindful, be intentional, be focused, be authentic, you know, maintain that connection. And then with Get Personal, one of the stats on that is 79% of people who quit their job cited lack of appreciation. And so when I talk about getting personal, I really want you to understand how much people want to feel valued. I mean, at the root of everything, people want to feel good about themselves. They want to feel good about what they're doing. They want to feel good about their contribution. They want to feel recognized. I mean, we don't go to work every day going, oh, I want to suck and have a bad day. I mean, we really want to add value and have fun and just feel like we're doing something that's contributing to the greater good. And so when we talk about get personal, it's getting personal on that level. Build and nurture relationships. Learn and spotlight other people's value. Use that balanced empathy. You know, Judy talked about empathy a little bit earlier. Use that balanced empathy. Really look for how you can elevate others. And so one of the stats I was looking at, it said people who lack confidence earn on an average $28,000 a year less than their confident coworkers. So what that's telling me is in this particular instance, it's not a gender thing, but it's an actual soft skill thing. And so when you're getting personal and when you're trying to influence, just really coming from that perspective that, you know, these essential skills that Thrive, we call them essential skills. They're important to who I'm being and how I'm showing up and how I'm influencing. And so just having that in your awareness as you're, you know, taking on that role as influencer. Use acceptance and non-judgment, normalize situations. We talked about that. Communicate to empower, and then hold the space for the individual to show up authentically. That's what Judy was saying earlier, just about, you know, if I have this story about this person and every time they show up, I have the story and it's a negative story, that's the energy I'm putting out there. And I can go into, you know, the gist, or I can go into the dynamics behind energy, you know, emotional contagion, osmotically picking up energy. Their science uses a lot of different terms for it, entanglement. But we're always picking up this energy between people, even over the screen. Someone asked me, can you do it virtually? And I'm like, if you asked me that question and I roll my eyes, how would you feel? So we're even picking up energy over virtually. And so if I can hold the space, if I'm trying to influence someone and I can hold the space of they've got this, they're talented, they're valuable, they're going to get this done on time, I'm carrying a different energy when I'm in an interaction with that person than if I'm holding the space of, oh my God, they're never going to get this. Are they ever going to come along? You know, how am I going to make this happen? And so they're feeling that from you. And so the more as an influencer, the more you can hold that space of, you know, this is a valuable, dynamic individual. That's what they're going to pick up from the exchange, even
Lori,
without saying anything.
Thank you for that, Lori. We had a question from Eve, and I'm hoping Eve may be able to reiterate a little bit more of what she'd like you to expound upon. Eve, if you're there.
Sorry, it was just I was curious about the quote that you stated where 28,000 less if you're confident. I missed it. I mixed it up and it was interesting. So if you would just say that again, please.
Oh, it's people who lack confidence earn on an average 28,000 a year less than their confident coworkers.
Got it. Thank you. Okay.
You're welcome.
Lori,
And then
we also have,
Christina
Okay.
had a great question of something that she's read, that women aren't raised to be less confident, but we're raised to sound less confident. What do you think about that and how can we deal with it? And then also any tips for using listening to build relationships virtually from Sarah.
Oh, interesting. And so so can you read the first question to me one more time, Jen?
Of course, women aren't raised to be less confident, but we are raised to sound less confident.
Okay, and I actually wouldn't go into that from a gender standpoint. I mean, maybe on average women are, but so from my perspective, I grew up in a house full, there were 7 kids in the family. So there were 3 boys and 4 girls, and I was the youngest. And so when I grew up, it was survival of the fittest. It was if you didn't talk, and you can probably tell by the way I talk, I'm animated and I'm loud, and that comes from being, if I wanted to be heard in my family, I had to be animated and loud. So a lot of it, I think, is environmental conditioning, and a lot of it is changing your story. So I grew up with a story. I was actually coaching someone yesterday, and they're like, oh, I know, I'm codependent, I'm this, I'm that, and they had all these labels, and I'm like, okay, let's drop the labels. And so we teach a lot about your story and what's my story, because oftentimes your story and those beliefs are what you're operating from. And so really look at your stories. You know, growing up, I was taught this. Do I want that to be part of my story going forward? Is that serving me? Because what happens is we get these beliefs throughout our life, and a lot of them when we're children, we get them from teachers, we get them from all over the place. And we never stop and look, is that story, is that belief still serving me for where I'm at now? If not, you may want to decide to drop it. So, okay, I don't like that story. It's not benefiting me now. What do I want my story to be? And what do I need to do to live this new story? And so I hope that answered your question. If not, please chime in.
I'll also add to that, there's a difference between a behavior and the energy. So our behaviors can come from our energy. So if we're thinking about the fact that we're not confident or we're carrying that story, we may behave in a way that is going to present differently because of that story that we're carrying. And so if you think about it in terms of, you know, the way the question is phrased is, you know, are we raised to sound less confident? Well, that has to do with kind of a behavior. You're talking, you're speaking. Do I sound less confident? Lori and I operate more in energy. What's the energy behind the words? What's the energy that you carry with you? And so when Lori's talking about the story, when you change those stories, you change the energy with which you're presenting. It doesn't matter if your voice is soft. It doesn't matter if you know, you're feminine versus more masculine. It doesn't matter. What matters is the energy behind the words that you're talking or using.
Because that's what I mentioned earlier. That's what people are picking up from you. It's that emotional contagion thing I was talking about. So if I'm showing up and I'm feeling intimidated or they may not know it's intimidation, but they're just picking up an energy that doesn't feel right to them. And so they're going to respond to you that way.
Lori, do you want to answer one more question that's on here? I think Jen, you already mentioned it. It's the tips for listening to build relationships virtually. Do you have anything, Lori, specifically on what you would do differently in the virtual setting?
And I would go into like reiteration. If I didn't hear it very well, I would ask. Just giving them that undivided attention. So, you know, I'm not sitting here picking up my phone and I can see their eyes go down, or I'm watching a dog walk by, or, you know, just make sure you're focused on the individual on the screen and you don't have multiple things going on in the peripheral of your screen.
Yeah, and I would add to that the authenticity. Just show up authentically and care. And if you can do that in person, then you can do that virtually.
And just a response, you know, if they say something that you agree with, oh yeah, I agree with that. You know, just let them know that you're interested and you're listening and you've heard what they said. Okay, Judy, I think you're on Create Momentum.
Beautiful. So I'm going to go through this pretty quickly here because we want to, oh, nope, we're not, Lori. We are going into breakout room. Oh, no, we're not. I'm sorry. I'm all confused. I am going on Create Momentum. So I just want to talk about it real quickly. And then after I talk about these two things, we're going to go into the breakout rooms. So one of the things that we know is that 70% of employees are actively disengaged. And this has increased since the pandemic significantly because it's harder. We're trying to balance our, you know, our self-care, we're trying to balance how we show up, we're trying to balance the things that we have going on at our homes, along with the things that we have going on at work, and we're trying to do this all in a very new way of doing business. And so Lori already mentioned acknowledging. I want to jump into the skills real quickly. She already mentioned acknowledging, but this one is key in terms of creating momentum, so I'm going to call it out again. And acknowledgement is one of the most impactful ways to influence engagement and momentum. And this is about, I see you, I value you, and you are worthy. And I want to just call out that there's a difference between acknowledgement and a compliment and recognition. Those three things are different. An acknowledgement is about the other person. It's something that you see that it is intrinsically valuable within that person. A compliment is about you. It's about me. I like your sweater. I think that your hair looks great today, whatever that compliment is. I think you did a really great job. Versus an acknowledgement, which would be, you know, I see that you really put a lot of effort into that job. That's very different, two very different examples. Recognition is more about giving the people the badge, the award, the pedestal, all of those things. All three of them are important. I just wanted you to be aware of the difference of those. They all can create momentum in different ways, and it helps to know what creates momentum within your people. That goes back to getting personal, understanding your people, what things actually motivate and create momentum. We already talked about stories, so I'm not going to get back into that, but I do want to jump into help reprogram neural pathways and patterns. Science has come a long way in understanding the brain. We now know that our brains have plasticity, so which means that we actually have the ability to change them, which helps us change our habits and our patterns that aren't serving us. And so one of the ways that you change these neural pathways is through awareness. As an influencer, the quickest way to create sustainable change and momentum forward is to not tell people what to do, but to actually draw them to their own answers and their own awarenesses. That awareness is filled with potentiality. That's what I believe. That's how I coached as a athletic coach, was I would draw my athletes to their own awarenesses so then they could make the changes. If I told them over and over and over and over and over again, it would take me a lot longer to get that change to happen. So that's just something to think about. I'm going to move over to remain curious. What we know to be true is teams with essential skills actually outperform other teams, which I think is really cool, because Lori and I have been doing this for a long time. And we know, based at the top levels of sport, based at the top levels of organizations, teams, individuals, these skills are really, really powerful. Operating from curiosity actually lets down the walls of rigid thinking and opens you up to unlimited possibilities and influence. So we want to meet people where they're at. We want to shift worry, stress, or anxiety to wonder. We do that through getting curious. If I'm wondering about something, it's very different than if I'm worrying about something. And so if you start to feel yourself worrying, or you're stressed, or you're anxious about a scenario, a situation, just bringing that word, I wonder if, it could be, what is in this for us? I wonder who will be the one to find the solution. I wonder if there's a way to look at this differently. That immediately shifts you out of your sympathetic nervous system into your parasympathetic nervous system, which opens you up again to what we said before, that clear focus. That's all I have. Any questions on that before we jump into breakout rooms?
We have a question more so around the trademark, around incorporate love and personal responsibility. And I'll let Judy or Lori chime in on that, but it basically is, we believe in love and personal responsibility and the way that it helps to make life better. It's one of our main missions at Thrive. And so I'll let them talk on that if there's anything.
So the way that we look at love and personal responsibility is that we coupled these two together because of the value that they bring in unison versus separate. So I can be in love or go ahead.
And the need for people who want to punch somebody, we, tie in that love just to kind of, some people say, oh, my personal responsibility was at the moment I wanted to hit that person. And so love kind of negates any harm we want to do toward another individual.
Right. It's that empathy side. It's that caring side. It's that kindness side, that when we couple that with personal responsibility together, we empower people. If we're only in personal responsibility side, like Lori said, it sometimes brings us way over into this other kind of selfish mode. And when you couple those together, you're moving forward in a much more powerful way. It's about me taking responsibility for my experience and loving you and myself at the same time.
Yeah. And so it's not that, I'm going to step on you to get ahead, mentality, because some people would look at, well, my personal responsibility is to get ahead and do this and do that. Well, I can do that, but I don't need to harm people on my way to success or harm people on my way to achievement or, whatever that may be.
Thank you, guys.
Okay, let's take a couple of minutes. There are a couple questions at the bottom. Which skills resonate with you? And then think of a scenario where these skills would have helped you. And so just take a couple of minutes and jot that down, and then we will jump into breakout rooms and have a discussion around that.
Those breakout rooms, you will automatically be put into the breakout rooms after 2 minutes. We also forgot to say that you'll be in the breakout room for 5 minutes, and then you'll automatically come back, and then we will share.
I'd like to sort of ask and say something.
Okay.
I'm a fellow coach, and I feel more and more as I talk with women that we have a societal agreement that if someone is negative energy or troubled in some way, we agree to avoid them and shun them. And it's just sort of a social compact. We don't put up with energy that's negative. That's not my problem. If someone shows that they're in distress, we say over their opinions, that's interesting. And I think we socially, especially if we're not one-on-one, find a way to let the person know you need to move on. You don't fit this culture. You don't fit this mood. I don't recall that growing up. I find that a lot of my clients are struggling too much with this. There's too much of a, are you a cultural fit? And there's an ostracizing that's going on if the energy is not right with the person, when in fact it might just be a bad day. And we're not really embracing people who are truly different. We may be all of the same race, but we're not truly accepting the variances amongst each other. And I worry I've got too many people who I refer to therapy because they were, say, with an organization for 7-10 years, all of a sudden they're not a cultural fit. All of a sudden they go to a conference and the energy isn't right. It seems to me like there's too much agreement to ostracize, and people are looking for a new place to work, a new place to fit. And the culture club of organizations has closed in and become a smaller, more narrowly defined group of people. I just worry that in this fragile time, we're ostracizing people that we could direct to get some help, or even just give them the ear that a coach gives, because coaches don't talk much. They direct, they ask questions, they absorb, and then they reflect. And
So
something
Alexandra,
about our social code right now isn't working, I think.
So Alexandra, I mean, Lori and I would argue that that is why you as influencers within organizations, it is so important to have these skills. The narrative is changing, it has changed. And I know a lot of passionate people that are excited about it, even though we're not excited why it changed. But we definitely are having different conversations than we've ever had before within organizations. And I would invite all of you to be the change, to be the difference in these organizations. Yes. It's one thing that we talk about at Thrive all the time is I don't care if you're a leader or I don't care who you are, you have influence. And no matter who you are within the organization, you showing up in a certain way or modeling a certain thing is going to be the change that needs to happen.
And helping spotlight that person's value. So as a coach, showing them where they're unique and how they can use what people deem as, not a good characteristic, how they can actually use it to their advantage, how they can spotlight their differences and say, you know what, these differences make me valuable. These differences make me important, and really help that individual get to that understanding.
Yeah, I think we have to be more embracing. The greatest managers I've had have said, yeah, well, those are the engineers and that's accounting. and appreciates the differences.
Mhm.
But I am hearing more and more managers talk like people have to be a certain way. And I think a strength in an organization is differences, sometimes awkwardness, sometimes similarity, but to really embrace differences. And when they're not, I think you're exactly right. We can play the role of influencer and help someone
Mm.
without being overly involved. Some strong signals are going out, I think. That's my thought, but I like your answer. Thank you.
Cool.
Beautiful. Thanks, Alexandra. All right. Kelsey, I think we should go into breakout rooms.
I'll push
You-
everyone out now for 5 minutes and then we'll come back.
Okay.
All right, we should be all back now.
All right, everyone, welcome back. We have a couple minutes, so I'm going to take you through page 5 at warp speed. It's pretty self-explanatory. This page is how you put it all into action. And so we have the 4 bubbles here: intention, create a plan, implementation. Implement it consistently. Intentional growth requires deliberate practice. Introspect, notice what's working. Like we said, it's individual. Notice what's working, review what's working, reflect on what's working. A part of this I want to mention is what you focus on expands. So really look for and focus on and expand what is working and spend little time on what is not, and really keep your attention to, you know, what you want to expand. And then innovation, innovate based on your insights from introspection and experiment until you find what works best for you and your influence on others.
Beautiful. I'm going to jump in right away. If you go to page 6, we always land all of our workshops with you walking away with what resonated for you. So if you would take some time to answer these questions, not right now necessarily, but make it yours. What do you really want to remember from the workshop? Which skills are you thinking that you want it to understand further? Create an I am statement. That I am statement is just like, I am centered, I am grounded, I am learning. It's that centering point. It's that thing that you can refer back to that helps you remember the stuff that's going on from the workshop, and then decide how you want to live it. So if you could quickly, before you leave, put something in the chat real quick telling us what you wanted to remember from the workshop today, what really stood out for you.
And thank you very much, everyone. If you have to go, feel free to leave. I don't know if Kelsey wants to wrap this up.
Yep.
Yes, I will do so. We just have a quick plug for our upcoming events, but before I go to that, thank you so much to Judy and Lori and Jen for leading this session. I think that there were really awesome takeaways that this group will be bringing back to their work and their life. So thank you guys so much.
Thank you.
Just to plug our next events, our February program meeting is coming up on the 18th. We're returning to our 3rd Thursday Tempo program meetings to hear on the evolution of the Milwaukee Public Museum. And then we'll be back next month, March 5th, for Tempo Talks, showcasing 3 Tempo member experts on how marketing strategies have changed as the world of consumers has changed. So thank you guys again so much. We look forward to seeing you next month and at our program meeting, and stay warm this weekend and enjoy. Thank you guys.
Thank you. Bye, everyone.
Thank you.